Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Looks like we might be having a technical problem with Facebook, but I will address that once I introduce my guests. What would life be like without a technical problem? It just wouldn't be normal, would it? But anyway, thank you so much for being here today with Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. This is where you can discover your own truth. Today, we're broadcasting live, as you just heard, on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. And we keep them in our prayers for all of the struggles that they are currently going through. Please join us in one of our various chat rooms to connect with any of our hosts and guests. Those are always available to you. We love hearing from you. And if you can, please subscribe to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled on YouTube. It would mean the world to me. Your support means more to us than you realize. So today, I have with us Denise Ramon. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Just a quick snippet on her background. She's going to be talking about herself, of course. Since early childhood, Denise has been aware of her powerful gifts of healing, although she was unsure of where it came from and unable to openly discuss it. She still kept it very close. Yet Spirit was not willing to remain silent and reminded Denise that her life purpose was to lift up and renew her fellow Earthlings. I love that. Today, with Denise's connections to the afterlife, she's able to bring comfort and healing to those who are grieving. And with divine guidance and her own patience, Denise is able to craft a tailored wellness plan for individuals, taking into account their unique needs. So let me bring Denise. Hi, Denise.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so thrilled to be speaking with you. Of course, I gave you a brief intro, but to kickstart this interview, tell us about your backstory. How and when did you develop your abilities? I've watched some of your other videos. It's really astounding. So if you can I'm going to give you the stage. I'm going to pull myself off a little bit and kind of let you talk for a few minutes about your backstory and what brought you here to where you could help other people today.
Okay, sure. Well, for starters, I wasn't raised in a churchy environment. We did only went to church when my mother was trying to get my father to stop drinking. And so we only went for maybe a month or two every 5, 6, 7 years for a little bit. But it was when I was 23, my older brother passed away rather quickly. And it was devastating to the whole entire family. So I remember at his funeral, leaning over his closed casket, of course, I was just doing, I'm going to miss you, the boo-hoos and that. And as I was doing that, this warmth feeling just infused my body with love and peace, like words really can't describe it. And telling me that that the time was right, my brother was with him, and that he was there for me. And I felt it was a masculine energy, so I say he told me. And I just remember saying, "Oh my God, there really is a God," but not the kind that you hear about in church or anything. And I'm not trying to diminish other people's faiths in their church, but it just wasn't that what I knew. And I didn't tell anyone about that for a year because I didn't want anybody to tell me that it wasn't true, because I knew it was the truth. And so I just would sit with that for the entire year. But what I did was I meditated, pray. I don't even know if you call it that. I would just go sit in a chair and just connect to that energy. And it seemed like as time went on, when I was ready for more, and this was back before computers. It was in 1981. And this was, um, I call it source. It can be God, whatever you choose to call it. Source would put the people, places, and things in my life for me to get more, understand more. My premonitions really kicked in about 6 months after that experience, and I knew what those were. So I would just find books to read about that, and as I dove in more into this, more was revealed to me, and I just knew this was the route to go. It's not something that I set out to do. And as a matter of fact, I kind of fought it, and I didn't tell anyone about it for a long time because I didn't understand it. I just thought people were going to think I was crazy or something. But that was the beginning of it. And then when I was 14, I knew I had the abilities to, do remote healing, energetic healing, but I didn't understand it. And then as time went on, it was shown to me and revealed to me. And then I had a mentor that knew that I had this ability, and she worked with me for a while. And that's how it all began. And just here and trusting, trusting trusting that inner voice. And I think that's the hardest part for anybody who, any psychic medium healer that starts out. It's about learning to trust that inner voice. And even today, sometimes I'm like, where did I get that from? Because it's some things I'm just like, oh my God, I never knew that. And they're telling me something. And then the person I'm telling it to validates that for me. Um, so that's really it in a nutshell about how I started.
So when you first started getting these messages from the void or the afterlife, whatever you want to call it, what were they auditory to you, like, or were they just telepathic? Like, did you think you were going crazy? Like, what? How did it feel?
Well, that's another part I left out. I thought for a long time that I had multiple personalities, not schizophrenic, because I knew what that was or what that is. But I thought I had multiple personalities because I didn't have no one to really tell me anything different. Um, and as I was working through some of my childhood stuff, I was going through it to a therapist, and I specifically asked her 3 different times, "Are you sure I don't have multiple personalities?" And she'd do the check off list, and she'd say no. And then one day, it just realized that I'm hearing spirit. That's what I'm hearing. Um, Sometimes it would be audio, but the majority of the time, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. And there's no doubt.
So you get that, and I know because I've had those feelings myself throughout my life, so I know exactly what you mean.
Mhm.
Um, and they're difficult to comprehend when you get one. Like, I remember one so distinctly before, my daughter was involved in a car accident,
Mhm.
and I jumped up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had spirit tell me that something happened to her, and you don't at the time, it's weird, but you don't question it, like, you're so
Right.
certain, right? It's like a very certain feeling, like something you just know. Is that what
It
you're
is
talking?
it is that because the feeling comes from down around your solar plex area, your stomach area. It doesn't come from up here. And it's just a knowing.
Yeah.
Of course, your humanness, that I like to call it, will try and tell you, "Oh, you're just making that up," but you know that you're not just making it up.
Right. And it gets me because there are so many people that still doubt these abilities
Mhm.
when everyone has them and everyone has intuition. So,
Yes,
like, if people can experience an intuitive feeling, why doubt anything beyond that? Because it's all possible. It's all within the realm of possibility, right?
it is. Well, I think the reason why we doubt it is because we've been told or programmed or not to trust ourselves. We are taught to trust everybody else, and because everybody else knows better than you do, and so now you're trying to change that habit that's so ingrained in you, to start listening to that soft whisper within you, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
And the we all are born with these abilities. You know,
Right.
some choose to use it more than others. I don't know why, we just do. I'm the only one in my family, you know, that I know of that has these abilities, and it's not that I'm better than anyone. You know, and I like to tell people, you know, like sometimes you just thinking of someone and then they call you. That's your intuitiveness right there. Um,
Absolutely.
and I always say, you know, we wouldn't come down here if we didn't have like a GPS to the other side. You wouldn't drive from New York to California without a GPS or a map or something. And it's just like we wouldn't come here without some type of connection. And the more you learn to trust that inner voice, the more empowered you become.
And that's such a great example because so many people that I talk to would say things like, I was just thinking about you and you called, or so it's not so far off to believe that people like yourself and other spiritual mediums have, these extended abilities. I'm interested in your healing abilities too. So let's talk a little bit about that. When did you really start noticing that you were able to help people heal? How did that first take place, and do you do it today? Like, walk us around that.
I do. So when it started, so I knew in my 20s that I had this ability, but yet I didn't know what to do with it. Um, and it wasn't until I became about 40 that I really got to know, because my mentor really worked with me. And one of the things she said was, don't ever go take a course on healing, like Reiki or nothing. Because she
Oh,
said, what you have is unique and you don't want to bring that in. And she said, just sit with the energy, ask your guides, ask your team to guide you. And you kind of feel like a fish out of water because you're asking something that you can't see, feel, or hear right away. And so you're learning to sit, to be still. And so what I did was just started practicing. And then my partner, who got migraines, I just could see where the migraine was. It wasn't just up here, it was in two spots. I could see where the connections were. And I would just start working on that. And I would just connect inward. And I would just say, you know, it's when I say inward, I know what I'm doing. But for
right,
people that have never done this, Spirit told me how to tell people. It's like, think of something that brings you joy. It could be that somebody gave you a piece of bubblegum one time, someone told you were pretty, or you found $5 when you were down to your last 50 cents, whatever it is that brings you joy. Get in that feeling of it. Because when you're in that feeling of it, you're connected in your heart space, which is a connection to source or God or whatever it is of your understanding. You're connected to your higher self.
right.
And so when you're in that, and to be still, it's, you know, it's just get with what you're feeling, not with what you're, when I say feeling, not humanness, just listen to what's
Right.
being told. And then my team tells me where to go, where to put the energy. And then they will tell me what's going on, because I can feel it. Oh, like, oh, that's an ovary. What's going on in there? You know, like one lady, she was in her 70s, and I could still feel the sadness and the guilt from her having an abortion when she was, I think it was 17 years old. And she was still carrying that and had no clue.
Wow. That makes so much sense psychologically
Hmm.
it's funny. Like, if you put your two hands together, you can almost feel the polarization
Yes.
between, right? Like, I can almost feel it in myself. And when my kids were little and they had a tummy ache, I used to rub my hands together and put my hands on their stomach and tell them, we're doing a healing. This was like 30, 40 years ago. And I just intuitively did that to help them. So that's why I'm so interested in what you're doing. Can you help people online or for your healing, or is it just in person that you
No, I
have?
do all remote now. I don't do any in person at all anymore. I don't cure people. I just want to make that clear. I don't cure people because I get people asking me, can you help me? You know, my mom has cancer or something. I don't cure people. But what does happen is the energy, it gets it balanced, it moves it around. You know, sometimes things do go away, sometimes the pain in the knees or the back or whatever. But what they do tell me, they're telling me what's causing whatever it is that's going on. And so when you can get in touch with that and start healing that part, then a lot of everything else starts to go away. Um, because my belief and what I've been shown is that all of our ailments are from an emotional place.
Right, right.
And so, you know, we can heal that, you know, depending on how far we've allowed it to go. But and as I say that, I'm hearing people have healed themselves from stage 4 cancer.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's about our belief system, you know, how badly do we want this?
Now, how do your guides help you? They do, right? When you're
Oh,
doing
yes. Oh,
so.
yeah.
So tell us about your guides. Like, when did you first realize that you had them? Like, did you try to find them, or did they just appear to you? Like, what was that experience like for you?
No, they told me, and, you know, I'm not an artist, but for some reason I see color. And they appeared to me in my 2 favorite colors that happened to be was purple and blue. And so that's how I knew that they were there. Now, one of the things I did was I just sat with that, you know, and I felt the colors to see if I could feel if they were masculine, feminine energy. What I come to know is that they're both 2 males and a female. And I also have other people on my team as well, but those are the main ones. Of course, my higher self is in there. They recently revealed to me, because I'd always call them they. They recently revealed to me that I can call them Naya. So that's my team today. But they, you know, the best way I think is to just allow them to tell you and who your team is. We all have a higher self, and you know, I say if you need to have a name, then name your higher self yourself. Name it your favorite name. I used to call my higher self Grace because I really like that name. So it's whatever you want to call your higher self. Like I said, for years, for decades, I just said they, you know, because it's not just one being or one person, and it's not just masculine or just feminine energy, it's both. So I just would just listen for it. And I tell you how that started, with not how it started, but when you're doing this work, your stuff comes up too.
Mm,
And so you have to get into your own healing as well in order to move forward. So I had to get into my own healing. And as time permitted, situations would come up to let me know I had things that needed healing. It's, you know, sometimes people are under this impression that us mediums don't have any issues because we know everything. That is not true. There's a
right.
trailer full of stuff we've had to work through. For me, you know, I had sexual abuse to work through, and I had zero memory of it. And it wasn't until my niece became that age, 3 years old, that I started having these uncomfortable feelings. And I had done a lot of work on myself to know if something is bothering me that much, there's something there. And
Right.
that's what threw me into therapy. And then as I started, and it makes you have to sit still and dig into your team because you really need something to know that you're going to be okay. But it's through working through all of that, it's where you find this abundance of amazing stuff. I want to say stuff, but these amazing avenues just open up for you. You know,
Mm.
it just does. And then the freedom you get from it all.
So after you realized that you had that type of abuse, then you started becoming free from it essentially because you acknowledged it and started healing from it, right?
Yes, of course, I got into back then. I got into therapy, and which that's still good. I think a good option for a lot of people. But I got into therapy, but and also in doing that, given my background, I knew meditation was real important. And instead of sitting in my stuff all the time, because there's times I did want to play the victim part, but
Mhm.
then it's like I had to sit with that, and it's like, what is this bringing up for me? What is it that I'm really mourning? What is it that's really hurting me? What's really going on? And people ask me today, if you could change anything, would you change that? And it's like, absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not.
So who is Eric, and is he someone that you channel? And can you
Mhm.
talk about that a little and maybe explain to our listeners what channeling is and how you do it and who he is?
Sure. So channeling Eric, there's a website, and there's also a YouTube channel for that. So Eric Meadows is from Houston, and his mother, Dr. Lisa Meadows, is the one that started the YouTube channel. God, years ago. I can't even 15 plus years ago, I guess. Um, anyway, Eric is someone who suffered from mental illness, and then couldn't take it anymore, and ended up taking his own life and shooting himself. And
Oh,
so his mom and was born and raised atheist, and but I say that, but she also knew there was something different. But so she went on this quest to find answers to this, and Eric made himself very visible, and the whole family noticed he was around because he would do things that it had to be him, and just the apparitions and stuff. And this was the avenue that his mother took, was channeling Eric, and she had a medium that channeled him, and then from there it just grew. And then she found me through some friends that she knows to help channel her son, and she has about 5 or 6 mediums, maybe more, that channel him, and we channel. Um, he comes in to help us because sometimes we channel things that and ask for his assistance and help with that.
so what does he tell you? Like, um, does he help you with when you do readings for other people too? So he's like one of your guides. Is that essentially how it works?
He says he's not one of my guides, but he does come in. He comes in when people are from channeling Eric, and he doesn't come in when they're not channeling Eric people. So I know when I have a client, I know if they found my name through channeling Eric or not, because he's there if they did, and he's not there if they didn't. Or if somebody referred them to me and they're from channeling Eric, then I can feel Eric kind of in the background. So that's how I know it was a referral from someone. So he's there, and he helps. He talks to me. He's very gracious about not hogging the front row. If people's loved ones come in, he allows them to speak. Sometimes they have trouble speaking because they weren't the nicest person to family members or whatever. Um, so he'll come in and help with that. He also just tells me things, so I can let people know what's
Yeah.
going on. Yeah. He's very he's young. He was 20, I believe, when he transitioned.
Yeah.
And I prefer to say he died from mental illness, because that is what he died from. He died from mental illness. But he, for whatever reason, he had an agreement, I believe, on the other side, that this would help heal. And it is because Mother and him have helped people all around the world.
Wow. I'll have to look into her YouTube channel. I don't think I've checked it out, but I'll definitely check it out. I have to ask you this because there's some mediums that don't like talking about or dealing with like the darker side of spirituality. They just don't acknowledge it. It's not in their daily vernacular. They don't want any part of it. But for me, like I believe that there's good and evil and on this plane that we live on, and that while I don't invite evil at all, believe me, I'm a Christian woman and I believe in Jesus wholeheartedly. But I like to acknowledge that there is evil, it does exist, and we need to fight it. And my question to you is this: how do you, because demons are great deceivers, they deceive us, although, or try to, I believe. They're that voice that we hear, that negative voice, you're not good enough. Jump off that bridge. You're not worth, this person doesn't love you. All the negativity we hear, that's to me a demon voice trying to tell you an untruth. So, how do you distinguish, or have you ever had to, between any negative entities coming through and angelic ones, or have you not had that experience at all?
Well, I think I deal with my ego every day because I call it ego, the humanness, Um, the ego is your fight or flight, that's what that's there. But we're not wrestling with tigers anymore. But it's what happens is for me, it's the ego, and the ego is always up here, it's never here.
Hmm.
Um, if we could, when we're getting into that anxious mode or the fearful mode or whatever, remember to breathe. Just breathe in deep through our stomach and really focus on your breathing for like 3 times. Because when you're focused on your breathing, you can't be anywhere else. So
Hmm.
you're not giving that stuff attention. Um, I, you know, I really try to check in where I am because I know without a shadow of a doubt, I know that I am I'm part of source energy. People call it a child of God or whatever. So if you're those things, how can you be anything less than that?
Right.
So, and that's hard for us because we've had X amount of years collecting information from the environment we lived in and from society and everything. Just like women, you know, how many articles do you see or hear about women needing to look like they're 20 when they're 50, 60, 70 years old? Now,
Or
young girls are starting to get Botox in their 20s and 30s. They're puffing up their lips or
yeah,
whatever because society says you don't look good enough. So, all of us women are taking on that. We have to look better. So, that's our ego taking the place of and bringing all that information in. You can call it negative, you can call it demons or whatever you want to call it. I like to call it a lower consciousness,
which it is. Right.
and so and it's like we all have a choice which way we go, and we can choose to follow that because it wraps itself up real pretty, you know. It's kind of like these dollar pastries that you can get at certain stores, and you can get 2 big ones for $1, but they have like they're probably 2 ingredients shy of plastic, but they look pretty, the
Yeah.
packaging's pretty, and it
Yeah.
tastes good right at first,
Right.
but the after effects are not. And it's about learning, like, what is it that I like? What am I trying to do? What am I, and so what I do for me is I don't listen to the news. I don't get into politics discussion because it's just not a topic that I care to discuss.
Mhm.
Um, And I just really try to stay focused on what's nourishing me. What is nourishing me? If you get into these thoughts, rather the lower consciousness, the demons, or whatever you choose to call it, go do something. Eric told me recently to tell someone, go put something sour in your mouth. And it's so funny because there are Instagram challenges where people are trying to eat the most sourest thing. I don't know what it's called. Yeah, you saw that. So, I was like, well, no wonder he said it, because you can't be focused on all that other stuff with that sourness in your mouth, or get up and jump up and down, change the energy.
Yeah. 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 For me, it's keeping busy. Like
Mhm.
if when I start feeling anxious or having those ego thoughts, I immediately become hyper busy, and then it works. It just works fabulous for me. But everyone has their own individual method that they use. I
Right.
wanted to let me do this. I wanted to show your website uh, window. Let me see. No, wrong one. Well, let me see if I could switch that. Because I think it's important for folks to be able to see your website and know what services you offer. Here it is. Okay. So can yeah, you can see that now, right?
Not me.
Oh, there we go.
There we
Oh,
go.
so
Okay.
here's your website, and of course it's Denise. Am I saying your name right? Ramon? Ramon?
Ramon.
Ramon. Okay.
Yes.
So you have testimonials up here. You have a list of services for folks. And I always
Yes.
like to make sure that we share that with people because, it's important so that people know what you offer. So you have you're a little about
Hi,
here, who you
beautiful
are.
soul.
And I
Welcome
do
to
encourage folks to go
DeniseRamon.com
visit.
website.
Now, your services, they're all online. You offer them remotely, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Is that through like Zoom or something?
The options are Zoom, Skype. Um, I have a couple of clients that do Signal. So I'll do Signal. If you have an Apple device, I do FaceTime. I do it that way. Yeah.
And folks get to ask you, like, obviously questions or have concerns about specific things in their life, and you try to guide them towards healing or something. I mean, whatever issue.
So what happens when somebody books a session, and I highly recommend writing down your questions, because even when I go to a medium, because I have friends who are mediums, and if we do a session, I'll forget what it is that I'm really wanting to ask. So I highly recommend writing it down. Um, I also highly recommend don't just tell me everything all at once. Let me connect with you. I do a little bit of hello, how are you, and this, and while I'm doing that, I'm connecting with you.
Sure,
I
absolutely.
I can't I can't read you if you don't allow it. So
Right.
if and I say that because I have some sitters that are extreme skeptics, and they're like, nope, she's not going to. I'm going to prove her wrong. Well, I'm not going to be able to read you, and I have returned money. I have stopped the session and said, I'm not here now. I appreciate and respect people who are skeptics, because I don't think you should believe everything just because someone said so.
Sure.
So I appreciate that. And so I'll tell you, take a deep breath, but write your questions down. And then your higher self and mind connect, and my team will come in. And or if you're from channeling Eric comes in. And then we're connecting, they're letting me know what's going on with you. No, they are not going to tell me your deep, darkest secrets. They're not going to do anything that doesn't come from a place of love. And I say this because I've had some clients come to me that have gone to other so-called mediums where they say, well, if you give me $300, I can get rid of this. No.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And, you
Yeah.
know, and also no medium, an authentic one, I should say, will ever come from a place of fear and scaring you. We all come from a place of love.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of scammers out there, so that's really good
Yeah,
advice.
there are.
What can people do to reach out to their loved ones? Because, like, I know for myself, like after my husband passed, and before he passed, I would always say to him, and we would have this discussion, don't forget, whoever goes first, give us a sign. You have to give a sign. And I was so like disappointed. I think I was overly anxious looking for one. Like, did I see a
Mhm.
red cardinal? Did I, like I think I was just obsessed in the beginning. And then I kind of let it go. And I said, well, if he wants to show me a sign, he will, that kind of thing. But even if, like, last month I saw a beautiful hawk
Oh, wow.
walking my dog, and I never saw one in my development. And it was like a Cooper's hawk, like a not one you see, and it was staring right at us in the tree above. And I looked up and I said, Joey, is that you? Like, is that you? And then it just looked at me and flew away. So to me, that's a sign. Like, it could have been or it could have not been. But so what can folks do to connect with their loved ones? Because I know from personal experience, it's so important to still feel that connection, that that person is always there with you. What can folks do to like reach out, connect?
The easiest one is write,
Yeah.
take and not type and not do it on your phone. There's something about getting what's up here down into the paper and pencil or pen and paper and write out, talk to them like as if they were here. Or you can just talk out verbally, and sit, put on some soft, quiet music. There's thousands of YouTube videos for meditation, really soft music, and get into that. Light a candle, or you can light a candle and just stare at the flame and think about them. Think about something that brings you a lot of peace, something fun, something that you remember them. There has to be at least something. And so get into that energy of how nice it felt. What I'm hearing is, or think about how you would feel if you had $1 million in your chair sitting in it. I'm here, like how would you get into that yumminess, that feeling, and just start asking, Joe, I really miss you, or Mom, I really miss you. Can you please give me some signs? And then there will be subtle signs. Sometimes there might be loud ones, but I'll tell you, spirit has a way of talking to us through animals. And it's
Mm.
like, it wasn't your husband who was the hawk, but it was your husband who communicated to the hawk and said, please go to my wife so that
Oh,
she would know that I'm still here.
that makes sense.
And so the hawk and your husband are communicating and doing what it is needing to get your attention.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, because whatever, I mean, we've all lost parents, sisters, brothers, and there's such a longing to be able to still, feel that connection. So
Mhm.
even get it. Like I was talking to a woman once and she was begging for her mother to give her a sign. And she was near this bookshelf, and all of a sudden, like three or four books just went flying off the bookshelf. And at first she was scared, but then she realized that was my sign. Like, there's no way those books would have went flying off the shelf. And I believe her wholeheartedly that that happened. So, and after she got that sign, she kind of felt at peace. Like
Oh,
it was all good.
yeah,
So,
and a lot of times too, you will have dreams, and you'll go, was that real or was that not real? And I like to call them dream visits, and they
right.
usually happen right before you wake up. And I highly recommend writing them down because you think you'll never forget it, but you start to, as years go on, you start to lose um, the concentration of it, the intensity of it. But when you go back and read it, you're going to be right back there. So these dream visits, they are real. They're coming to you. That's why they come to you at the very end of your dream, your waking moment. They come right at the very end, and
Yeah.
they're and that people say, God, I felt like I was there, or I felt like they were here, and they are there. And this also doesn't just go for people. This goes for your animals as well,
Oh, yeah.
because everything is energy and everything goes to the other side. That was one of the things that they told me. I say that source told me at my brother's funeral was that the time was right and that my brother was with them and he was there for me. And I knew in that moment, everybody goes to the other side. And people don't like to hear that
Yeah.
because they want to hear that these people who are mean and ugly go to hell.
Right.
I was told there is not a hell.
Really?
Yes. But that doesn't mean that we get off scot free for what
Mm.
we do. It's not like we get to erase the dry erase board and then, like, okay, I'll have to. What you don't finish here, you continue to finish on the other side. And this is all about expansion. And there's no expansion if you're not working on yourself.
So is it through like karma that you work these things out? Like, is it through reincarnation that you work out your karmic path? Like, if the
But,
people don't go to hell, how do they pay for their sins? I mean,
well, there's a really good book out called, and see, we say it's sins. We're the ones that say it's wrong.
right.
Um, you know, um, like it's wrong to get an abortion for some, but it isn't wrong for others. We're the ones that say that it's right or wrong.
Very
And
true.
I know people don't like to hear that, but it is true. It is not okay for me to wear two different socks out, but it's real okay for somebody else. So, but it is as we reincarnate, and we choose to reincarnate, and because it's like expansion on steroids, because we have these senses, the six senses, to help us expand. When we go to the other side, Eric says he misses the physicalness of things, like eating a brownie, drinking a beer. And
Sure.
I told him that's funny because we miss the physicalness of you
Right.
and our loved ones. And so he said, so when you're doing things, make sure you're in present moment, like you're enjoying, feel the water wash your hands.
Mm.
Start feeling whatever it is that you're doing, being conscious of it. But again, Eric's reminding me I went off. So reincarnation helps, but they're also doing things on the other side, doing things because they're, from what I've been told through Source and my team, is that they are also working real hard and creating environments for the people they've harmed so that they can heal too.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
So,
because they can't go on and expand to bigger and better without the people that they've harmed getting healed.
gotcha.
And
That
I
makes
know
sense.
that, and I know that that's hard for us to comprehend. And I can tell you, with my brother's death, because he was murdered,
Oh, good Lord.
and you know, for a while there, I really wanted to um, go to the company that was responsible for this, but I knew that that wasn't the answer. And but also I knew that the person that killed him, I didn't want them dead because, well, then that would be an easier route for them.
Right.
And then through my work, I realized it's not a get out of jail card free. It just isn't.
Do you still communicate with your brother
Oh gosh,
spiritually?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My brother, my mom, my father. My father comes to me with blue jays. And it's so funny because where I moved to, because I moved out of Houston, and I was told by a realtor and one of my clients up here in the hill country in Texas that blue jays don't come around here. And I was like, oh, we have blue jays all around.
Wow.
Yeah. And my brother definitely, I find feathers for him, but I can just feel him sometimes. And um, my daughter used to see him a lot when she was young, and she never met him because she was born in 2001. But she would see him, and so, and my mother, her symbol for me is a heart. So I
Mm.
do see, um, I get those messages from her that she's around, and like I said, I have a sister that recently, well, it's almost a year now, but I can feel her. You can just feel you're not by yourself.
Right.
But I want
I
to say one of the things though is when you're in heavy grief, they don't come down to your energy level. It's when you start to rise up in your energy level that you start to feel them, because grief is heavy, heavy.
Yes, it is.
But you are entitled to that grief.
Yeah, and it's the strangest thing because I had heard an analogy that grief is like a rock and
Hmm.
you wear it in your pocket and it's very, very heavy at first, but every day you get stronger and it becomes easier to walk around with. It's always there. And
Right.
that's true. You do get stronger every day, whether you lost a mom, a dad, a sister, a brother, it doesn't matter, a loved one. But yeah, grief is you have to experience it to know it. Like, and I don't wish it on anyone because it's god awful. But was it difficult for you to come out, like so to speak, to your family and friends? I mean, did they think you lost your mind? Because I've heard so many stories like that where you try to come. Some people are easier at understanding and accepting, and other people are like, no, you've lost your mind. So what was that like for you?
Well, for my mother, she didn't really want to hear anything because she hated God, didn't want nothing to do with God because God took her son.
Oh,
And so that's where she was. But every now and then I would drop hints, like not hints, but just say, your angels here, use softer words and stuff.
yeah.
And with my sister, I would say, like, well, I would say something about angels or something. And one time my sister got something in the mail about bereavement meetings and it had angel wings on it. Um, so they didn't really, I just didn't push it on them because I'm not going to try and convince anybody what I know to be the truth for me. I'm
Right.
just not. Um, it was scary coming out though, because I knew what I knew. And
Yeah.
so I didn't tell a whole lot of people. It's just the people around me that knew, um, because I didn't want to get into a debate, which I wouldn't. And it's okay if you don't believe. It is. Now, and I don't go around saying, "Oh, I'm a psychic medium. I'm a healer." I don't go doing any of that. And I'm not on the clock 24 hours. When I'm out with friends and that, I'm not reading you or anything. But it's they let me know. I say they, my team Naya lets me know when it's okay to tell somebody. And so I'll just say, well, well, I'm a psychic medium because something is around, something as to why they're wanting me to tell them. Um, but no, it was because I didn't want anybody to think I was crazy.
Mm.
And then one day I was like, why do you think they think you're going crazy? And it's like, who thinks you're crazy? And then it's like, it was me that was thinking I was
Yeah.
crazy because you don't have, um, it's like astrology. You have some guidelines to go with. You have books, you got programs and all of that. With this, it's all about intuitiveness, and some of us have been graced to where we can see things but even then, it's kind of, it's just strange, weird, and fun, and crazy, and weird, and all of that.
Yeah. Do you separate religious beliefs from your abilities or do they coexist together?
Um, they coexist, but I just because believe it or not, the first person I told about my experience with my brother was a Catholic priest, because
Mm.
my friend was Catholic, and she says, "You need to go talk to my priest." And when I was a young kid, I wanted to be Catholic because they got to eat donuts after church. Because
Oh,
my mother didn't allow you to we weren't allowed to have sweets. She was a very big health fanatic. So I always wanted to be Catholic because you got to eat donuts. So I took my friend up on that and told the priest, and I could tell by his eyes he had had a same experience. I could
mm.
tell. So I was like, that was my sign, convert to Catholic, because I wanted to be Catholic when I was younger, and now here I'm going to be Catholic. So I happen to love Jesus, and I happen to love the Blessed Mother, and I always, when I'm doing my healings, I ask Archangel Michael and Raphael to be present. And that's one of the things when you're doing this work, always bring in a team to support you. You can just say, all the beings of light be present, just something. You want something you want to just put like a shield around you, a protection. Because
Yeah,
if
like,
your light gets brighter, people see it, and then people will want to poke at it in all different kinds of ways. So always do the protection. But so I love all of those things about it. So I do bring those things in. Now, do I believe 100% how the Catholic faith believes or some other religion believes? No, only because I've been told different.
mm,
Because there is no shame. There is no original sin. There is no sin. There isn't any of that. But if you believe that, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to convince you that that's not true. Because if you believe that, it is true for you. And that's okay.
so while you say there's no sin, there is a moral law, though. I mean, you can't, there are certain things you shouldn't do, like murder someone or, commit, like, I
Well,
mean,
I
some,
agree. I agree. Well, there's a consciousness,
yes, exactly.
And so, like the thing that happened in New Orleans, my first thought was those people, that person was so disconnected from source, so
Yeah,
disconnected, because somebody that has a consciousness, no way could do something like that.
yeah,
Because what you give to others, you're actually giving it to yourself. That's why we feel good when we give to others, because you're giving it to yourself. And that's why you feel crappy when you're spitting out hate, and then you want to go back and say more, because it never feels good to you.
no, never.
So because you're giving that to you. So there is, I just say, like, for the person that caused all that havoc there in New Orleans, they're not having a fun ride right now. Just
No.
know that. Just know that.
It's tragic when you think of the poor souls that were just innocently walking down the street. And it's funny because I've talked to so many different spiritualists and mediums, and they
Mhm.
say that some of them say that they chose to pass that way, that was their, unconsciously, of course,
Right.
spiritually. And I find that so difficult to wrap my head around. But then again, when you think of children that are born into this world with disabilities, they say the same thing, that they chose that to enter the earth in that way as like part of their life lesson.
Well,
That
it's
they,
not just for them, it's for us too to learn from, and I'll give you a good example. It's not that we say, oh, I'm going to die that way. It's just that nobody, and this is what I have found to be the truth, what Source has told me, nobody can take your life until you say you're ready to go. So, yes, those people, in a sense, how I say, volunteered for that. And I looked at a couple of their faces and just connecting and just sending them love and light. But they're part of the bigger picture to help bring peace to this planet, to bring to the light what's always been there. All this stuff that's coming up isn't new. It's been there for decades, hundreds of years, and now it's coming to the surface because
Yeah.
it's like we've been sweeping the dirt under the rug, and now it's finally getting shook out. So like my brother, he was supposed to die August 9th. And I was so pissed at him for choosing that way to go. Like, why couldn't he be at home? Because he died in Mexico. But after I got through the grief period, I realized why he chose that route. My parents didn't have insurance, so, death insurance. So when my father died when I was 17, my mother became a widow and she didn't have an education and she had to go work.
Yeah.
So it was a struggle for her. So my brother died 6 years later. So because my brother's death was a murder and it was a cover up
Oh,
for
boy.
something bigger, it was a legit company, but they had another company underneath of that.
Oh,
So what they did was gave my mother a chunk of change so she wouldn't question anything.
oh,
That money allowed her to live somewhat comfortably for 16 years after my brother died till she transitioned. And what it did was it brought exposure to what they were doing. It gave my mother a chunk of change. And it really, and look what it did for me. I mean, my God, without that, I wouldn't be here, but it was his time to go. Why he chose to transition at 28, I don't think we'll ever have a good enough answer.
yeah, right. Wow, I see the connecting of the dots there, though, for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
Wow.
And why little babies die, or they're stillborn, and there's something in there for the parents and everybody to learn. Sometimes the babies just want to know what it feels like to go through the birth canal or something. I don't think there's ever a good enough answer for us who are still here.
Yeah,
Um, I just know that there's a purpose for everything.
I agree. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, Denise. Um, I can actually feel your wonderful, powerful spiritual vibes right through the screen. So thank you so much for this.
You're so welcome. I want to say your husband says one of the ways also he gets to you is by your feet. So I don't know, do you feel your feet being warm
Yeah,
sometimes?
I do.
That's him.
Especially
He's rubbing your feet.
that's so weird.
Yes, he's rubbing
So
your feet.
that's really true because like at night, like my feet will be under the covers and then I have to and I that never happened to me before.
That's him.
Oh,
He's
wow.
rubbing your feet. He says, I'm healing you. I'm helping you to heal. I'm helping you to embrace the newness. And he says, there are some amazing things coming your way. Not that they aren't already here, but he says, just know you have a basket of goodies coming to you.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
I pray that he's at peace and not in
Oh
pain.
my God, he is so happy. And he shows me he's showing me he's about 50 and he's showing me with a belt on. So I don't know if he was too big for a belt or if he never wore a belt, but
He always wore a belt. He always
huh?
wore
Well, because he's showing me he's wearing a belt. So usually it's either they show me they're wearing a belt because were too big before, or they just never wanted. But he's still wearing a belt. He says, but he
belts.
says he goes. I never knew how beautiful it was to be where I am now until now. He says, and I never knew how beautiful it was to be there where you are. So now he gets to enjoy the beauty from you. He says, because we feel everything. And he says he's at peace. He said he even made up with, did he have stuff going on with his mom and a brother?
With a brother, yeah.
So he made peace with that.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, he made peace with that.
Gee, thank you so much. I've never spoken to anybody about that, his passing or anything. So I really appreciate that. It makes me feel good. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Red, there's something about the color red. So keep your eye out for red, because something about red. He likes red, he says.
Oh, I'm going to have to connect with you soon. Wait for
Sure.
one of my emails.
Okay,
I'll-
sounds
uh,
great.
Thank
Sounds
you.
great.
God
You're
bless
so
it.
welcome.
Thank
You're
you,
so
dear.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
You too. Okay, so now that was great. I'm kind of taken aback because I never really spoke to anybody about my husband who passed. But let me just get my ducks in a row because I'm super, super excited to talk to Clint again, Clint Weldon, who I'm going to bring on screen right now. Clint.
Hey, Carol Ann, how are you? It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am thrilled to have you back again, especially because we are going to talk about, of course, drones. Let me just stop this ticker here and let me put your website up there so folks can know where to get you. Do you want your nightshift.com one?
Sure. That's as good as any.
Yeah, let's do that. You'll bear with
That's
me.
our home base.
Yeah, let me just take out the other one and put yours in because I want folks to visit, especially your YouTube channel, which I'm obsessed with.
Thanks. That's good to hear.
I aspire to be like you, Clint. All right. Now, let me show this ticker. Awesome. So, folks, you can reach Clint on his website as well as on his YouTube channel, which I highly recommend that folks check out. He has the most extraordinary guests and just a great way of relaying information, both intellectually, factually, and you just have a great presence. But I'm done complimenting you now, Clint.
Well, I like that energy. That's good. That put me in the right mind space. So I'm ready to rock and roll now.
Good, absolutely.
Thank you. That was a good boost.
So just tell folks a little bit about yourself before we get into the drone craziness. Let them know again how you got started in this world that you're involved in night shift, especially, and let them know again where they can find you. I'm going to remove myself while you.
Sure. Well, so I'm just a guy that is really into UFOs and UAPs and this whole situation that you may or may not have heard about that's been unfolding for a period of years now, for a long time actually. But it kind of started, I've always been fascinated by it, but in 2017, things took a turn and accelerated quite a bit with Lou Elizondo and the Tic Tac Go Fast gimbal videos that came out and everything in the New York Times, the Leslie Kean articles. So when that all happened, I found myself not just into UFOs, but I kind of fell down the UFO rabbit hole and got into what some might call an obsession. It was just too exciting and too interesting to not be completely absorbed by this topic. So I was just focused on it and watching everything and trying to pay attention to what was happening. And it looked like so much was taking place all at one time. And it kind of for a minute felt like this could be it. This could be where we really find out some stuff. And so I was talking to everyone about it. I would talk to my friends about it. I'd talk to my wife, my neighbors, and you find out really quickly like what people's tolerance is for UFO talk when you just start talking about it all the time. And it turns out not everybody was as obsessed with it as I was. So in my previous career, I was a voiceover artist and I had my home studio set up. I had this whole studio situation that I'd built for the work that I do. And I decided, I'm just going to start a YouTube channel and just see if anybody else is as into this as I am. And so I called it Night Shift because I was working on it at night after everybody else would go to sleep. My wife would go to sleep, and I was just up late doing this. And so I did it, and it took off, and it became this sort of, I don't want to say phenomenon, but it's more of a support group for people who are super into the UFO topic, but don't have a lot of other people to talk to, that are looking for a community, that are trying to figure out what is going on, what is happening. How is it that so many people from all walks of life, from all different levels of education, from people with PhDs and master's degrees, all the way down to blue collar people and regular little kids and everybody in between, has these incredible stories of experiences, things that they've seen in the sky that they cannot explain, or experiences, encounters that they've had that they cannot explain, that are just outside of the boundaries of regular day-to-day logic and reason and life, and it's just this exceptional world. And so Night Shift kind of started as almost like a it was just a place to go talk about this stuff, and it became this I don't know what it is. It's a big channel, it's a support group. We have a Discord server now. We have a huge community of people. We have former military, former intelligence people. We have former people with scientific background and education that sort of all participate together in this discussion. And we watch the news. We try to pay attention to what's going on. And we talk together internally and try to get to the bottom of this as much as anybody can, sort of by crowdsourcing it. So that's the Night Shift in a nutshell. I wish I had a better elevator pitch, but that's about it.
No, that's great. And I've been trying to just share both your sites there, your YouTube and your website there. So definitely, folks, make sure you head over and check them both out. I will have the links to both, of course, in the description of this video on YouTube. So be sure and head on over. So I know you've been talking a lot about drones, and I've been obsessed with researching them too. But of course, I want to hear what's going on with these drones, in your opinion. Like, tell us.
Oh, man, I wish I knew. That's the thing, is like, no one really knows. But that's the thing that is so strange, that for those people who may not know, that for a number of weeks and months now, actually, around the world, there have been drone sightings all over sensitive military installations around the world, both in the United States on the mainland and in the UK. There's a base called RAF Lakenheath in the UK that had drones flying in the airspace above the base. There was the Air Force. It was Langley, had a number of sightings for a period in October. This was going on, and then most recently in New Jersey, the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, that area. All these sightings, and I've gone back and forth. We've tried to talk to people who are actually on the ground witnessing this stuff. And so on our show, we've had some folks come on and try to explain what it is that they're seeing. And it's kind of strange because no one explanation seems to fit. Some people are seeing really bizarre, strange lights in the sky that don't look anything like what you would consider a conventional drone. And others are seeing these big, what appear to be very large, but very human-made drones that are just sort of in the air, loitering and running some kind of a, flight pattern over certain areas. And a number of people are saying they're coming from the water, sometimes 30, 40, 50 at a time. And then they'll come in, they'll fly over an area for a period of time, and then they'll disappear. So initially it was a question of, are these regular drones that people are just fooling around with? Is this pranksters, or is this some kind of a terrorist thing? And that was sort of the first place everybody's minds went. And in the UFO community, there is this hunger to sort of find the UFO needle in the haystack, and we're kind of frustrated because it's very hard to pin that down. And we have a mix of things now that we can see. There's civilian drones that are just flying around like they normally would be. There are military and law enforcement drones that are apparently studying something. Those are actually legitimate human-made drones. And then there are these strange lights that nobody can seem to explain, that don't make any kind of sense, that come and go, They are seen 1 minute, the next minute they disappear. They can't be tracked. They can't be followed. They just vanish, and they just sort of.
Are you talking about like the orbs? The
The orbs. Some people call them plasmoids. Some people call them orbs.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not just. It doesn't. Orb might be not the most accurate word because they do look a little bit different from one to the next. But a lot of people are seeing what they describe as glowing orbs, just out and about. So it's still a big mystery. The strange thing is the government won't tell anybody what it is. They either don't know, which I find very difficult to believe. I just can't buy that they don't know what it is. So they do. So I'm operating under the assumption that they do absolutely know what it is.
Well,
They just don't want to tell us.
Didn't Trump say Biden knows what they are? He said that.
Trump gets this, as far as I know, Trump gets the same intelligence briefings that Biden gets now. Yeah. And so the two of them are on the same page in case something happens and he's got to step in. Everybody's on the same page. So he said that Biden knows what they are and that we know what they are, and he should just tell people. But that's easy to say when you're not the guy when you're not the one who has to do it. He could tell people, if he really wanted to, I guess. So I don't know, I don't know.
I don't know either, because in all fairness, he's not the president yet. So maybe he's kind of just extending that courtesy to Biden to kind of come out and say what they are. The bad thing that the government does is they kind of, they're not upfront and honest with what's actually happening. If they don't know, they should really just say, look, we don't know what it is. I mean, they kind of said that, but then they would counter that with, oh, but it's not this, and it's just planes, and it's people, it's hobbyists and stuff. So it's the same thing with what they do with UFOs, the same garbage.
They talk you in a circle and they go nowhere.
Same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
The same thing. They will. These press conferences are hilarious because they will get into a reporter will ask a direct question. And there was a great moment. This was just a few weeks ago, and I wish I could remember the reporter's name. She tried to pin down John Kirby on this, and she was, I don't know if it was John Kirby or if it was the Air Force spokesperson, but she tried to pin down whoever the person was holding the press conference, and she goes, can you just make this make sense for us? Because what you're saying doesn't make any sense. And they kept trying to judo flip out of this question, but she wouldn't let it go. And I was like, if every other reporter would be that tenacious, we probably would get some answers. But it's a weird one.
I heard they were dying down, these drone sightings. Now I heard they're on Reddit, because I follow a lot of Reddit blogs that really show good imagery, video, and I kind of dig it. But it's weird because now there's supposed to be an uptick in drone sightings again. Have you heard that it was kind of quelling down and now it's kicking back up again, and not just in New Jersey, but all over?
I've heard so much stuff that I don't even know what to believe anymore, to be very honest with you. And this is coming from someone who this is my full day. As I wake up, I'm looking at these articles, I'm reading all the same things. I just have that time to sit down and sort of absorb it. And even with all of that, nobody really knows. And if the people who do know are, the government, I'm assuming, does know, but they're not telling us. So you have to ask yourself, why are they not telling? Why wouldn't they tell us? Either it's because they don't want us to know because knowing would cause people to freak out. That was my first thing. I was like, well, if they maybe they're concerned that whatever the information is, it would cause people to panic. So then you have to ask, well, what information would make people panic?
Yeah.
And at that moment, this was a few weeks ago, I was thinking, well, it's holiday season. It's, it's the northeastern US. It's super densely populated. There were rumors that there was some kind of a nuclear
that too.
The nuclear weapon that had been smuggled in, or some kind of a nuclear thing that people just weren't, which made sense to me. And at the time, I thought, that's it. That's got to be it. You don't want 12 million people trying to evacuate New Jersey, New York, or you don't want that at Thanksgiving, Christmas time. You just can't do it. So you don't tell people. And for a week or two, I thought maybe that's what it is. But then it just kept getting weirder. And it kept getting, and if you've been following it too, you've seen these videos of these straight weird stuff.
Every day, this is like I get up and I go, I have to check out what's going on with these drones. It's making me crazy at this point. And I'm going through this weird shift right now because I saw a video, and maybe you can tell me what you think of this. I wish I would have wrote down what channel it was. I want to say it's something like the Vlog Brothers. They have like millions of followers. Anyway, they said that this happened in December of 2019 in Colorado and Western Nebraska. Vice published an article and that the drones were not real, that both incidences happened exactly at around Christmas time. And they came up with that they were hobbyists from parents getting Christmas presents. So, for their kids. So
Right.
Of the 23 reports between January 6th and January 13th, when the investigation was underway, 13 at that time were determined to be planet stars or small hobbyist drones. 6 were commercial aircraft and 4 remain unconfirmed. And that none of the 90 reports back then in 2019 from November 23rd and onward confirmed any instance of illegal drone activity. So I'm like, that's a weird correlation to me that this happened before.
Well,
like, where's the connection?
so then the question is like, well, maybe these are some foreign military, or maybe they're just some kind of super advanced drone, or, but there's all these different, for my part, I want to go, and I think the UFO community needs to be very strict about, like, we need to exhaust every other possible explanation before we go to aliens. It doesn't look good. It's not a good look to be like, everything is aliens all the time. That's not good. We want to go, well, what are all the other things it could very likely be, or way more likely to be? There are some super advanced, very weird drones that were developed in the late 80s, early 90s. Like, there's stuff that's been around for 30, 40 years now that if you saw it today, it would look beyond what you'd expect. I mean, they've just got, there's some really cool video out there of stuff that they were doing like 30 years ago. That just like a drone that can just take off straight up in the air and then hover, and then on little jets it can just bounce around. It looks like a marshmallow almost, just sort of floating around a room. And this is back in like 1994. So it could be, a private company testing some kind of weird technology that they have. It could be, you just, after a while, we start to run out of excuses, though, because you just go, well, if they are unauthorized drones and they're in restricted airspace, if they're flying around above an airport or a military base, and we're not shooting them down, it's either because we can't or we just won't. And if we won't, that means they're ours, or we know whose they are and we're not going to mess with that. Or it means we just literally can't shoot them down. We don't have the means or ability to take these things out. I don't understand. That's the thing. No one knows, and no one's talking. It's very strange.
Like, where's the drone technology? Where is that? Now, you brought up this video. Do you mind if I kind of just show it? Because that's
the one.
Yeah, this blew my mind. Let me see if I could play it. I don't know if the audio is through.
With no pilot to compromise performance, even more unusual craft and propulsion systems have been designed and tested.
Yeah.
This incredible machine was originally designed to shoot down nuclear missiles and satellites.
Yeah.
Just 12 inches long, gyroscopically balanced, and with thrusters at key points around its body, it is capable of instant changes of direction.
Cover. Cover tracking. Cover. Roll. All right.
No airplane could ever catch this machine.
Emerging through the changes and mergers was the lightweight exoatmospheric projectile.
That's pretty insane.
It's the size of a loaf of bread in 1991 or 1992. and it's doing all of that. Can you imagine if you were standing outside, your apartment, and you looked out in the sky at night and you saw something like that flying around the sky? You would think it was a UFO, even today.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the one though. When I saw that, I was like, ugh, I don't know what I'm looking at. I just don't know.
Yeah, folks should definitely check that out. If you just type in drone 1990, it'll come up first. But I don't think it's extraterrestrial. I just don't think these drones are. I don't get that vibe at all. Like, what senator said there was a mothership off the coast of New Jersey?
I don't remember, but I don't know how. I mean, he must not be familiar with the United States Navy and Coast Guard. Like, I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, he was laughed at. I think he retracted that.
I think the best explanation I've got right now, the one that is the most logical, that makes the most sense of everything I've heard, is this. Because you're right. If it's aliens, trust me, you'll know. Like, we will all know. There won't be any question. There's going to be no question at all. If and when they show up, it's going to be a show. That's my guess. But I think with the situation with the drones is that they're testing. It's a test. It's a test. It's a real world test to see how people will react in the presence of something really weird in the sky over their city, over their military bases. What do we do? How do we freak out? Do we, how do people handle it? How does the news handle it? If it's a complete unknown and you don't tell people what it is and you just let them worry and guess and wonder, how does it spin out of control? I've heard that hypothesis put out there, and it seems to make it checks all the boxes for me.
Yeah.
You would make a test that's really weird. You wouldn't tell anybody what it is. You would let it play out, and because you'd want to see, what if another country launched a drone attack and we just couldn't recognize it because we're used to seeing, like, we want to see fighter jets flying in, and we're expecting one thing, but it comes in a totally different form. And maybe they fly drones over and poison the municipal water supply for a gigantic area, and they just take a whole city offline. How long would it take for people to put that together if they didn't know what they were looking at? And I think the only way you could get usable data out of an experiment like that is to be completely opaque about what it is. Just do it and let people wonder, and just record all the information you can get.
I agree. And I'll tell you, out of all the information that I've watched and the videos that I've watched, I saw a video by Chase Hughes. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me about Chase Hughes.
I took notes, like copious amounts of notes. I'm going to share just quickly. Let me just present. Hold on. Here it is. Okay, let me just add it to stage. Okay, so this video blew me away. This guy laid out the most brilliant plan and mapped out every possible scenario for these drones. You have to watch it because and you have to kind of take notes. But he starts out with the diversion tactic, and he covers that. So, like, for instance, during the beginning of COVID, the government released UFO footage. What was it, as a distraction?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was that kind of vibe. So he goes through that scenario. Then he goes through using fear as a tool, because fear unites people, and that people are more likely to give up their freedoms when they're faced with a threat. And that makes them more amicable to trusting the government. So he goes through that. Then he goes through this normalizing phase, which is where people become, and I think we're kind of there now, where people become curious but not panicked. So we're kind of, like you and I, checking drones. Millions of people are doing it across every day to see what's going on. So Are they testing the waters? Are they trying to gauge how people, like you just said, how people react? So you can think of it like a slow drip instead of pouring it all out. And this wasn't the first time that something like this happened. Back in 63 and 64 with the Gulf of Tonkin, right, Clint? So we had that. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but he goes through another premise, a need for a savior, talking about the media blitz, solutions. You have to watch it. And of course, is it all a big psyop? I mean, this guy here, he's like an ex-military psyop specialist. Something, I don't want to degrade his title, but he's got a lot of clout and rankings and experience. Just the way he laid it out to me is absolutely brilliant. So after I watched that whole thing and took notes, I kind of feel a little more settled about the whole thing.
Yeah, it strikes. I will watch it. I just jotted this down, and I've got the video title.
Good.
It does strike me as it's not what we think it is, and it's they're not going to tell us. But I don't think it's aliens. I'm not there yet. I think it's something else. Now maybe what it could be is that they're trying to figure out how we're going to react if aliens do show up. How do you find out? Like, how would you test that? You know, they know they've always said, well, people will panic. Well, how do they really know? I mean, the closest thing we have to look back at is the War of the Worlds, you know, radio broadcasts, and a lot of that was sort of hyped. So maybe if there was an idea that they might show up, you would do a test like this to see what people do.
New Jersey? It's so. Why New Jersey? Like what?
Why not?
Why
a lot
not?
of people there.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know. That's why that nuke thing made so much sense to me, because they said there was a missing nuke delivery in some cargo was damaged, and that really rung, like you said before, rung true. Like
I just had this. I've heard there's this old sort of rumor that's just been around forever that during the Cold War, the Soviets snuck in these small suitcase-sized nuclear weapons, and they would park them in like a basement someplace or a storage unit in some industrial park in New Jersey or where, you know, just someplace you would never look. And then they just wait for someone to be activated. Then they would send in some guy or whoever, and they would go switch it on, and then they would just get in the car and leave. And I always thought, well, you would, I mean, I don't know if we would know. Maybe we don't have the equipment, or maybe there is a way to hide that where you could shield it. Maybe that's what they were looking for. I just had this, and I saw the thing you were talking about with the mayor who said there was a radioactive material in a shipping container that got damaged, that disappeared. And that was a real thing, but apparently not related. I don't know.
And then
I don't
you see
know.
this terrorism that's happening, and you know, I'm trying to connect the dots there, and I'm thinking, well, if the drones are there to seek terroristic plots, they're doing a real bad job of it.
Oh my God!
Because we have
especially after September 11th, and then we're for 20 years they're running this campaign of if you see something, say something. They're putting like. We were so ready for a terrorist attack for the next 2 decades that like they had people thinking any second they're going to jump out from behind a bush and take out everybody. And the fact that they can now, these drones are just flying around over the city, and they're just flying around New York and just in the air, showing up at airports and stuff, and no one is dealing with this. It kind of pisses me off in a way, because it's like, where did all those trillions of dollars in security investments that we made over the last 20 years go? Where's all that money being spent? Like, who is in charge here? No one seems to be in charge. No one wants to own this thing. No one wants to claim any responsibility for it. It's very strange.
Well, when your president spends 80% of the time on the beach, it's kind of hard to have faith in your government.
Yeah, it's a great point when you put it that way.
It really is. So, you know, the 20th can't come fast enough, to be honest. I just want something else. There's got to be something better. I'm praying to God it's Trump. So, like.
Well, that's the big question, is that, you know, everyone's looking at the Trump administration now and saying, okay, well, you're the guy. You said you would tell us. So, like, will you tell us? Are you going to do it? And I think there's a lot of hope and optimism there. I think, you know, it remains to be seen how that shakes out. I think a lot of times once these guys get into office, it's like the real day-to-day demands of the job are just so intense that it's hard to like
Yeah.
deliver on all these things. But I remain optimistic. I hope that he does clean house and we find some stuff out.
I hope so too. I mean, I always say, you know, Trump is one person. He can't solve the world's problems, but then people will say to me, well, he has a great team of people and they're going to get in there. And it's great to have hope. But someone once said to me, live in hope, die in despair. Or I don't want to use the curse word, but anyway, you get the point. It's not that I don't have hope. I do. I just have such a mistrust for our government, especially after what's been happening with COVID and everything that's been coming out, the truth about that. So it's very difficult to trust in your government and believe in them when we've been lied to so diligently and emphatically over the years. And I think behind this whole drone thing is the government. What they're doing, I don't have a clue. But my senses, my spidey senses, are just telling me that it's our government at work here. I don't know what they're doing, but why between midnight and 4 a.m. too, Clint? What's up with that?
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think that's the most. So again, you know, operating from what's more likely, aliens or it's our own government doing something? It's way more likely it's our own government doing something. I'm going to stop there first. And as to what it is, you know, if you just look at the next, say, 5 to 10 years, and you look at kind of where drone technology is now, where it was 25 years ago, where it is today, where it might be in 10 years, look at these robots that are coming out now that can run like a cheetah, that can do backflips, that can cartwheel through a window. You know, they have swarms of these drones that can, like a swarm of bees, they can fly 1,000 of them in formation. They can do the next really big war, whatever the next really big war is going to be beyond terrifying. It's going to be on a level that we are not really, I don't think, prepared for. And that's assuming even if they don't fire off any nuclear weapons, it's just drones. Because you're going to see some crazy technology that we've just never really seen before get weaponized in a way that we're not ready for. And I think a big part of what you might be looking at is them trying to test, like, what if that happened against a city like New York? You know, you could roll up with a shipping container, and inside of a shipping container, there could be 1,000 drones. Each one of them could be carrying 2 pounds of explosives. And you could send a swarm of these things out and shut down a city, or you could shut down an air base, or you know, you could do all kinds of crazy things. I think they're probably just as aware of that as anybody. And they're probably testing to see what our weaknesses are, what our, you know, response is going to be.
Like a really plausible thesis to me that, you know, look at China. I mean, a lot of people thought this was, China, this is definitely coming. It's their drones. Look at you've seen some of their shows. They're spectacular. I mean, just their drone shows are amazing.
Yeah, but those drone shows are what you're really looking at. When you're looking at that, you're going, wow, look at that. Now imagine all of them coming after you. Like personally, you just know, you know, when you see 1,000 drones in the sky and you go, now imagine if they all turned on me or all turned on this neighborhood.
Like you said, and armed to the teeth. I mean, you know, I don't know. As far as the orb thing goes, I saw someone give a very good explanation as to the state of our digital cameras today, how light gets reflected when you try to center in on an object. And they had charts and graphs, and they were explaining, like, they're not really orbs. They're just fractions of light that are bouncing off your lens flare. But some of these orbs look like they're in space. Like, how would your camera do something like that if it wasn't? I don't know. It's the orb thing is making me even more crazy.
The orb thing is okay. So the orb thing is real. That people are seeing them. They are getting footage of them. And there's another camp that says that our drones are there to study these. That, like, there is some non-human technology at play here, and then we have our drones deployed to sort of monitor the situation because we can't do anything else. We can watch them, but there's not much else we can do. That's my second favorite option after the first one that we just talked about.
Okay.
But I'm a photographer. I've been a photographer for over 25 years. I teach it. It's something that I do all the time. I know that a number of the videos that have been recorded by professional news crews and professional videographers and photographers who do this for a living, and this is what they do. Those people know how to run their camera, and they know what a lens flare looks like and what bokeh looks like, and they know when they have sharp focus on something. Sure. And it could just be that there was a great video that a New Jersey news team, the camera operator got of an orb that is in focus. It's just that when it's a ball of light, it just looks, that's what it looks like. It just looks really weird. And he zooms in and you can see them zoom all the way in, and then they show this thing and it looks like a glowing ball of light the size of a Volvo hovering about 500 meters in the air. And it's really strange, and it's blinking like Christmas lights, and it's just this weird. It's exactly what you would think when you think UFO. You know, the classic description: strange lights in the sky, doing weird things I can't quite understand. So we do have some legitimate video from qualified people who understand what they're doing and know how to get good video. And it does look really strange. There's no question about it.
They really do. They're making me even more crazy than the drones. I mean, I've interviewed and made friends with quite a few people who they don't like to be called abductees, say had visitation from, and have been on alien ships, and they're not crazy. They seem very legit to me. I've interviewed them for hours, and I believe them. And they say that these drones are not extraterrestrial. That's what they're telling me. As far as the orbs, though, they say that some of them are saying that they're angelic. What do you think about that?
Chris Bledsoe is one of the most famous experiencers today. He's probably the number one with a bullet best witness. You're familiar with Bledsoe's story.
Oh yeah.
Multiple people, including his son and 2 employees that worked for him, all at the same time, all saw these orbs. They experienced missing time. They were chased all over town. They drove their truck all over town. They saw the orbs followed them everywhere. And then he had an encounter with a being that he called the Lady. He was given a prophecy. He was told that an event would happen in the very near future, and it would unfold like this, X, Y, Z. And then they told him. He recently put out a video, and he said, now he's also known for being able to summon these things on demand. He can walk outside.
People that can do that. Yeah.
He points and you can go on his Instagram and watch these videos. He's got hundreds of videos of he points his camera up and there they are. And it's definitely not a drone, and it's absolutely not an airplane. There's no question that it's something. It looks like a little glowing, I want to say like a firefly. You know, you've seen them. It's almost like but the size of a basketball. Just kind of very beautiful. And he talks to them and he says that he believes they are angelic. He says that they are part of the inner working of creation. They are tied to life on this world. They are somehow directly linked to what life does here. And he says that I think it was 2026. I don't know the date. I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was 2026, he said. According to his contact with the Lady, something is going to happen, and we're going to all know. Everyone's going to know. There won't be any more question about what's going on. He said that's going to be. We'll close the book on this whole thing.
I can't wait for that. Did you see the video of the one where she said she was recording this beautiful orb and she started talking to it about Jesus, and it actually reacted to her? Did you see that?
No.
Oh,
Who was this?
it was some random lady and it was all over Twitter. It's all over Instagram. I can't believe you missed it, but that happens. She's got this amazing recording of this orb, and you can tell she's shooting it herself. It wasn't like AI or anything like that. And she starts communicating with it and saying something like, isn't Jesus wonderful? Don't we love Jesus? And there's a biblical orb. What's the name of it? Jeez, I'm a terrible Christian. There's a biblical orb that does the same thing. It's got like rotation inside of rotation. And
yes.
about.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel terrible that I forgot
That video. Yeah, I've seen the video of that thing.
Right. Well, she recorded the exact same thing, and it's got like rotating wheels and inside of wheels. Once she started talking about Jesus, the thing reacted. And then when she stopped talking about Jesus, it would stop reacting. Yeah, it gave me the chills, Clint.
I think when this thing is all said and done, when it's all over and we look back on it, we're going to realize that what we use religion and we're using science to try and talk about one thing. We're really trying to talk about one gigantic thing that is so big that it's almost too big for any one thing. So we have to use all of these different ways of describing the same thing. But what we're seeing might just be the same thing people were seeing thousands and thousands of years ago, and that throughout human history have been interacting with as if they are, these beings. That I think that's very likely. I think it's extremely unlikely that they all just showed up in 1947. And until then, it was just quiet here. I feel like
I agree with you wholeheartly. I mean, people goof on Ancient Aliens, the TV show, but I love watching that because there's a lot of truth in a lot of what they present.
There's just too much evidence of strange beings being documented back thousands of years ago in cave paintings and religious texts and hieroglyphics, and you see these renderings of beings wearing helmets and spacesuits, and they're carrying a bag with. It's just flying machines that shouldn't exist, and they've got drawings of these things. I think it's more likely that we've just been under observation for a very long time, and they've just been coming here, and we're seeing it today, and now we're just like, oh, okay, so we can kind of talk about it more as a species on the internet, and that's what's new. Is now we're kind of all experiencing it at the same time. But I think that what people are really hungry for is some kind of a clarity. They want confirmation. Like, is this aliens? Is it something else? Like, just say it so that we can get on with our day. And
because then they're getting to the point where and these are Instagrammed all over. People don't care. They care about paying their bills. Oh, there's more drones up there. Who cares? Like, they have that laissez-faire attitude. But on the flip side of that, there's this spiritual awakening too, Clint, that's happening. And you know about it. You heard about it. And it's I think a wonderful correlation. And that's why I too think that these orbs, these prisms, whatever you want to call them, are angelic in a sense. Plus, look at crop circles, not to hop all over the place. I refuse to believe that crop circles are made by humans. Maybe some were, absolutely. During the whole, they were trying to like prove that it was a hoax in the beginning. But there's no way that all those crop circles are made by humans. It's not possible for humans to create them, right? What's your thought on them?
The crop circle thing is one of the most amazing mysteries in this whole conversation, because no one really has a good answer. And if you look at the ones that they have had people fake crop circles, and if you look at pictures of those and compare them to a real crop circle, it's not even close. It's not even the same ballpark, not even the same sport. That we're talking about designs that are so detailed and specific and so massive and huge, and there's no footprints, no tracks leading to or from the design. They just appear overnight, and then the ground, the soil itself is radioactive sometimes. The plants have been genetically changed. They grow differently. They react differently. Sometimes the stalks of the plants and the crop circles are actually woven together as if they were like literally woven.
Yeah.
Linda Moulton Howell has done a ton of work on this, and she's got some fantastic stories about crop circles. And people talk about if you stand in them, you can feel your skin tingling. You can feel like a static electricity sometimes, and there's that.
Equipment doesn't work, batteries go dead, and then they see orbs of light appear before the crop circle appears. There's lots of sightings of these orbs over the crop circle. Maybe
have you ever seen that? There's a video of an orb making a crop circle. Have you ever seen this? It's an old video.
No.
If you go on YouTube and look up "orb makes crop circle," it should show up immediately. It's a little ball of light, and it's a video. It's like someone's looking out a window at a field, maybe I don't know, 1.5 football fields away, and they're looking at it, and they see this little ball of light, and it goes zipping over the field, and right there you can see the grass just changes, and it creates this crop circle, and it looks like it's a pretty old video.
Oh, I think I found it.
You'll know it's exactly.
Well, you can tell me if this is the right one you're talking about. Let me just add it to stage. This one?
Quite so easy to come by.
Let's see.
Oliver's Castle.
This one. This is it.
1989.
There's a couple of lights down there somewhere.
This controversial film appears to show strange objects hovering above a cornfield. Below, complex circle formations appear. Retired electrical engineer Colin Andrews.
Oh, I guess they cut that short.
There's too many strange. The crop circle thing is too weird. I just think it's too weird for people to be doing. Not to say that some people haven't done it, but I just think there is a connection there. And it's interesting that we're not talking about crop circles right now. Like the conversation in ufology seems to be like really squared up on disclosure, government disclosure in that official sort of way. But the other thing that's been interesting to watch over the last few weeks is the number of people who have been blowing me up about. Have you heard this Telepathy Tapes podcast? Are you familiar with this? It's called the Telepathy.
No.
Okay.
Is it on YouTube?
It's on it's a podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts, and you just Google the Telepathy Tapes and it'll come up. And I just started listening to it, but there was I must have had a dozen people individual just text me like, you've got to hear this. You've got to listen to this. It is about this researcher who it was studying nonverbal autistic children and found out that they have the ability to read the minds of their family members.
I heard about that.
And not only can they read them, they set up these insane experiments that are so controlled. It's unbelievable the way that they did this. And they document the whole thing. You go through, and these children can write down, you can think of a 3-digit number, they can write it down from across the room. They can tell what color you're thinking of. They can literally just talk to you in your head. And not just one kid, not just 2 or 10 or 15, but 20, 30, 50, 100. Not only that, but it's a teachable skill that people can learn how to do. And so I only bring it up because you mentioned a minute ago the woman who was talking to the orb, and she would mention Jesus. I think there's a connection between these lights that we're seeing, these orbs, and there's some kind of a telepathy connection going on there. I think this is something we can all do. And I think that at their level, wherever they are, they've mastered it to a degree that we're just at the very beginnings of it, but they've got this like fine control over it. And I think that when people are like Chris Bledsoe are communicating with these orbs, that's what's happening. It's all telepathy going back and forth.
See, I really like how you are not just stuck on the ufology aspect of what's going on, but you have this connection. It kind of weaves through with the paranormal and crop circles and telepathy, and like you see the connection. Am I right? Like you know that there's so much more.
At the bottom of the UFO rabbit hole, all roads in ufology weirdly lead to consciousness in some way. They take you there, and it doesn't matter who you talk to. Whether it's an experiencer or a contactee or an abductee, and anyone who's had an encounter face to face with a non-human intelligence across the board, I've never seen a single one where they didn't say this they were telepathic. There's almost 100. In fact, I can't think of a single case where they weren't communicating telepathically with these beings. So that's one thing. The people who supposedly have worked on the craft and reverse engineered the technology say that, and this is dozens and dozens of different various reports throughout decades have all said that at some level, the technology that these beings use is thought controlled.
Yes.
You think it and it works. It just happens. It's
I've had
instantaneous.
tell me that. She was been contacted her whole life, and she said it's all designed through telepathic communication. So you're exactly correct, I think, about that.
I think that what we call the paranormal is just outside the boundary of what we currently understand. But I think that the technology of these non-human intelligences, that imagine they've had an extra million years on top of what we've done. How far would your technology would be invisible? It would look like just regular anything. It wouldn't. And they say, this is what they say, people like Bob Lazar, who have supposedly been inside the craft or various craft, they say there's nothing in them. It's empty. It's just like a chair and a little table. There's nothing, there's no buttons or switches or knobs or there's none of that. There's no screens. It's just the wall is the screen. It turns into an invisible wall. When you want to look through it, it turns into a screen. And I had the sense that like the ufology is going to cover more of the paranormal discussion than we think. By the time we get to the end of it, we're going to find out that a lot of the things we look at, like ghosts and poltergeists and that is probably going to be more easily explained by some kind of like interdimensional being that can mesh between one world and another. And we'll be able to expand our vocabulary and our language. We'll have ways of discussing these topics that won't sound so woo-woo and weird. It's going to just be normal. It'll just make sense because it'll be incorporated into our larger understanding.
You nailed it, because nowadays more than ever, these types of conversations are more normalized than you know, like, I don't care what people think. If they think I'm crazy that I believe in talking these topics, you're entitled to your own opinion. Look at the woman I just interviewed. She's a medium, a psychic, and she claims that she's heard from my passed on husband, and I believe her. Like, I know the difference between a fraud and someone who's genuine. I think I'm intuitive enough to feel that. Like, I can tell a crazy person who's pretending to be a psychic from somebody who genuinely has abilities. I mean, and I think you're right. This is all going to be unearthed, and we're going to see this correlation and this connection soon.
I think so.
Now,
I hope so.
Last time we spoke, you talked about briefly your ayahuasca experience. Now, during that experience, you said you were able to have this intuitive premonition of your son's birth. Am I correct?
Yes.
5 years before.
Yes.
How do you account for that? I mean, how did that change you when that happened?
It didn't change me right away, but I knew I had this. It was at this period in my life where I was sort of in between careers, and I wasn't quite sure which direction I was going to go in, and I had a lot more questions than answers, and I was just sort of trying to figure out, I just needed to get to the bottom of some stuff. We've all been there. Everybody's, you just get to a point where you're like, I just need to like drill down on my life and figure out what it is that I've got to do. And we do it in different ways. Everybody's got their way. For me, I had heard about ayahuasca. My wife is Peruvian, and so we had conversations about it. Ayahuasca, for people who don't know, is an indigenous medicine. It's a substance that's made out of combining 2 different plants that are found in the Amazon. You combine them together, and it creates this drink that you can consume. And if you drink it, you travel to the astral plane, more or less, and you have experiences there. And so I had been familiar, I was familiar with this, but I wanted to try it. And my wife set up an ayahuasca retreat for me that we were able to go to. And I was in Cusco, and I had this experience where it was about 2 weeks of preparation of a really strict diet and really strict sort of no caffeine, no sugar, no refined carbohydrates, no meat, nothing. It was like vegan and boring. To purify your body. And then we did the ceremony. And during the ceremony, I had never had an experience like that before. And so, but I had meditated and I had done some, a little bit of that, but I hadn't done anything like this. And for the very first time in my entire experience, I watched the world in the room that I was in dissolve. And I found myself in another place that was inhabited by intelligent beings. And it was the strangest thing. There's almost no way to explain it. You just have to do it. You have to know it. And for some people, I'm not saying everybody should go out and do this. I'm just saying for me, this is what it took. I needed to know. So I did it. And that way I could walk away with an experience of knowing that I just couldn't get any other way. And during that, encounter, I was told many things. I was shown many things. I was given downloads. What you'll often hear this term downloads, where you get like a attachment to you get an idea, and when you double click on that idea, it opens up into 10 years of life experience in your mind, and you just suddenly have it. It's a download. It's unbelievable. It's like 30 years of therapy in 4 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And I saw the spirit. I saw my son before he was born. And at this time, we were told we couldn't have children. It was medically impossible for us to have children. And I saw this little child. I saw his spirit. And it wasn't until a number of years later that my son was born. And much to our surprise, like we had been told by multiple doctors that don't count on this. And he's a healthy, happy boy. It's the exact same kid I saw in my vision. I was shown this years before it happened. And then when it did happen, it took that time for the change to really hit me. And over that period of time, what changed was I gave up alcohol. I just lost my taste for alcohol. Couldn't drink it. Wasn't it? And I was a pretty athletic drinker for a period of years. I was very passionate about it, and I pursued it with a lot of energy. And but it just kind of went away, and I found my personality mellowed out, and I changed in a lot of ways. I found myself calmer, more at ease. I didn't feel like I had to race the rat race anymore. I just felt like I've got it. Everything you need is right here. And it just sort of became this thing. And then when my son was born, it was like the final cherry on top. It's like, oh yeah. And that whole experience that you had that you thought was pure magic that couldn't possibly be real, it's totally real.
I love that.
You just have to like accept that. And once you go there, then you go, well, okay, anything's possible at this point.
Well, we have 2 minutes left, Clint, next month when we speak, because we have this deal, and Clint better hone up this obligation. I know you will.
I would love to come back.
Every month for an hour, we are going to have one of these talks, which I look forward to and with much anticipation. And I think next month I would love to talk to you more about your ayahuasca thing. I am so tempted to do a journey myself. Maybe someday I'll get the courage to do it. And I also want to talk to you more about the paranormal and your whole vibe on it, where I'm going to have a punch list of questions for you. So how does that sound for next month?
That sounds like a plan. I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And folks, don't forget, check out his website. I'm going to link your photography website too, because I looked at your work and it's pretty brilliant.
Thanks.
So as you can tell, I'm a big fan of Clint, just overall. But check out his Night Shift, his YouTube, and his photography website, which I will have links to all, as we have 30 seconds left I will go in as soon as we're done and make sure I add them all. Clint, thank you so much. I will be in touch with you soon via email. God bless. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I know you did. And God bless you and your family. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Caroline. I'll talk to you again soon.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you so much. I think we have 30 seconds or so left. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I will have all the information in my YouTube channel for both my guests today. And thank you so much for joining us. I always look forward to these talks, and be sure to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. That always helps. Your support means more to me than you know. And it's 7 o'clock. Bye, folks. God bless.